I had a $1.2 million painting hanging up in my childhood bedroom, and I surrounded it with Nick Jonas posters because I had no idea that the painting was worth $1.2 million. People who know me personally know that I've lived through some crazy fucking shit and that my family is batshit crazy, but this story seems to be everyone's favorite because apparently it's just so my family, which I do agree with. So I'm gonna tell you this story while I eat my yogurt that looks like absolute shit, but I swear it tastes very good. So a little background for anyone who's new here. My parents are in their 70s. I was adopted. People always ask about the age gap, but they grew up during the Cultural Revolution in China. If you don't know what the Cultural Revolution is, what sparked it was that 1% of the country basically hoarded all the wealth in the country, whereas the rest of the country was dying. So the people of China decided to stand up and overthrow the wealthy capitalist bourgeoisie, which sounds a lot like what's happening in America right now. Anyway, that's how the Communist Party came to be. Dad's family, as poor as they could come, village poor, whereas my mom's family, they're one of the original Shanghai families. Now, during this time, if you were one of the wealthy families, there's like three options. Either you gave up all your wealth and distributed to the people, or you escaped to Singapore, Hong Kong, Taiwan, which is what most families did, or you got killed. And a little side note, because I think when Americans think of generational wealth, they think of families like the Vanderbilt family, where their wealth goes back 200 years to the start of our country, whereas Chinese generational wealth, that shit goes back centuries, okay? Think about that. Anyway, back to the original story. So unfortunately, my grandfather was killed, but my grandmother was an absolute badass and was like, fuck you, you took my husband, you will not take away my city. So she smuggled all the family assets out of China and just dispersed it in vaults all across the world, and then went back to China and got a job as a kindergarten teacher and raised my mom and her brother, and the rest is history. That's how they survived. Fast forward to me being raised in the States. I grew up in the same house my entire childhood, and in my bedroom, I had this scroll painting encased in glass bolted into my walls. And here's the thing, my mom was super strict with me. I was not allowed to paint my walls. So I remember asking if we could take the painting down because I thought it was fugly, and she said absolutely not, never fought her on it again. But I was like a little teeny bopper, and I loved my Tiger Beat magazine, so I just was like, okay, fine. I'll decorate my room with Nick Jonas posters because I loved Nick Jonas at the time. My grandmother ended up passing away when I was in middle school, and we had to bring her ashes back to China to lay her to rest in our family memorial site. With my grandmother passing away, my mom decided it was finally time to bring back some of our family assets that my grandmother dispersed across the world decades ago, back to China, back into our family vault. So in comes the appraiser, because we had to get things appraised in order to get insurance on them to fly them into the country. I'm like 11 or 12 at this time, circa 2008, 2009. Imagine, just put in your head what a 2009 tween bedroom looks like. Justice Just for Girls, Webkins, Jonas Brothers, Bieber Fever, all of that. This appraiser walks into my room, looks at the painting, looks at the rest of my room, then turns to my mom and says, "You have a Tang Dynasty scroll painting in perfect condition next to Nick Jonas?" And my mom just laughs and is like, "Yep. Now can we finally get this thing out of my fucking house? Thank you." I remember being in shock when I heard the valuation because I spent my entire childhood referring to this as the thing in my bedroom because I hated it so much. But I don't think I actually fully comprehended how historically important this artifact was until I started taking Chinese history classes in high school and in college, when it really clicked in my head that the Tang Dynasty was the 6th century. We are in the 21st century. Anyway, years later, I ended up having a conversation with my mom about why she chose my room to put the painting in. And she said, well, one, it didn't fit with the decor of the rest of the house. Thanks, Mom, because it totally fit next to my Jonas Brothers posters. And two, it was the least suspecting room in case of a robbery. Because according to her words, you'd walk into that room and it was just junk everywhere. The Webkins, the posters, you would never assume that anything in that room was really worth anything. Which, touche, mother, touche. And then all the pieces clicked in my head of why my mom was always so private, secretive, why I wasn't allowed to have sleepovers, or how we have no photos of the interior of our house. Like, I have no photos in my childhood bedroom because my mom didn't want any log of anything in our house where someone could see the photos and like know what to rob or take or whatever. So that all makes a lot of sense now. And thankfully, my mother had the foresight to take everything in our house and vault it back in China before I got to high school, because once I got to high school, I definitely threw my fair share of parties when they were out on business trips. And if anything happened to any of those items, I would probably still be grounded today. On both my mom's side and my dad's side, I am the end of the family lineage, unless I pass my last name on to my kids. That's still to be determined. But the point is, someday I will be the one responsible for this painting. And when that day comes, I will personally apologize to this painting for referring to it as ugly.